Imagine trying to deal with the most complicated bathroom routine in the world while wrapped in clothing that looks more like an engineering project than an outfit. You're stuck under layers of heavy fabric, enough to cover a small family. Your waist is locked into a corset so tight that even breathing normally feels impossible. And all around you is polite society, people who would faint if they knew the clever and sometimes shocking ways women manage the most basic human needs. That's exactly what we're exploring today. How Victorian women handled something as simple as going to the bathroom while dressed like moving monuments to fashion. The solutions they came up with are as creative as they are surprising. But before we step back into that world of hidden chamber pots and secret bathroom strategies, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your city or country in the comments. I'm always amazed at how people from across continents can come together to uncover these fascinating pieces of history. And if you enjoy these deep dives into history's hidden corners, make sure to hit that subscribe button. There are so many more incredible stories ahead. Now, let's go back to a time when using the bathroom was almost like a sport, and women had to rely on planning, strategy, and stealth just to relieve themselves. Getting dressed in the Victorian era was no small task. For women, it was like gearing up for battle every single day. The first step was a thin linen shift, a base layer meant to protect the expensive outer clothing from sweat and skin contact. Over that came the corset, pulled so tightly that some women's lower ribs were permanently reshaped. Then came the petticoats, sometimes 6 or 7 layers, each adding extra bulk and structure. But the centerpiece of this entire outfit was the crinoline, a steel-hooped cage connected with fabric bands. This invention could spread out to as wide as 6 ft across, turning everyday activities like sitting down or walking through a doorway into careful, calculated movements. Some were so massive that special chairs and furniture had to be designed just to handle them. Living inside this kind of moving structure meant women had to rethink everything about hygiene and bathroom use. What should have been a quick, simple routine became an organized performance that required preparation, assistance, and a lot of creativity. At the heart of this system was the chamber pot. These weren't just plain containers. They were designed with oval openings and curved interiors so they could be positioned properly underneath layers of skirts and fabric. The finer versions even had lids, both to control odors and to signal household staff whether they were in use or ready to be emptied. In wealthy homes, chamber pots were hidden inside beautiful furniture. Chairs had secret compartments, cabinets disguised pots behind polished wood. Elaborate commodes looked like fine furniture, but served a very different purpose. Behind the scenes, servants moved quietly through the house, checking, cleaning, and replacing these items with practiced skill. For the women themselves, using one of these required patience and precision. Lifting 20 lb of fabric, steel hoops, and lace wasn't an option. Instead, they learned exact movements, half engineering, half choreography. The oval pot was placed carefully beneath the skirts, and through careful positioning and adjustment of fabric, the entire process could be completed without ever removing a single garment. At large gatherings, this whole system became even more formalized. Ballrooms and grand houses often included special retiring rooms, private spaces where women could be assisted by attendants. These maids acted almost like pit crews, helping to manage the layers of fabric, positioning the chamber pot correctly, and then handling cleanup discreetly afterward. The entire process had to be done so smoothly that no guest ever suspected a thing. These women became experts at staying calm and looking elegant while managing some truly difficult practical problems. But here's where things take an unexpected turn, and it might surprise you. For much of the Victorian era, many women didn't wear underwear as we know it today. With so many layers of petticoats and crinolines, extra undergarments were seen as unnecessary. The skirts themselves provided enough coverage, or at least that's what people believed. That idea started to change once crinolines began causing embarrassing public accidents. Imagine a woman walking through a crowded street when a sudden gust of wind flips her enormous skirt inside out like an umbrella. These incidents happened often enough that society realized extra coverage was needed. The solution was something completely new for the time: split crotch drawers. Unlike modern underwear, these weren't solid garments. They were two pant legs joined at the waistband with an open gap in the middle. The design was brilliant. It gave women modesty in daily life, but still allowed them to use the bathroom without removing or adjusting anything. Of course, the bathroom challenge was about more than just clothing. The supplies available were nothing like what we have today. Toilet paper, in the form we recognize, didn't appear until the very late Victorian years. Before that, people used whatever they could get: old newspapers, catalog pages, corn cobs, leaves, or scraps of cloth that could be washed and reused. Wealthier women preferred soft linen cloths, which were laundered along with other household items and offered more comfort than rougher alternatives. Even these, however, required careful management by staff. Then there was the monthly challenge of menstruation, which added another level of complexity. Victorian women relied on homemade cloth pads, along with something called the tea bandage, a fabric belt designed to hold absorbent material in place. These absorbent materials ranged from cotton and rags to moss, wool, or anything else that could serve the purpose. On heavy flow days, women sometimes had to change their makeshift pads 12 to 20 times. All of this was handled discreetly, beneath layers of skirts, usually without assistance, and always in silence. Menstruation was considered a forbidden topic and rarely discussed openly, even among women. Clothing maintenance added further difficulties. Those extravagant dresses, covered in beads, lace, and multiple yards of delicate fabric, weren't washed regularly. In fact, many households only did large-scale laundry twice a year during events known as Great Wash Days. Instead of washing, gowns were brushed clean, aired out, and sprinkled with powders to absorb odors and oils. The undergarments, such as shifts, chemises, and later the split-crotch drawers, were washed more often. These acted as a protective barrier, keeping the costly outer layers in better condition. Public bathroom systems also reflected Victorian resourcefulness. Some buildings still used the old garderobe system from medieval times, which meant an opening in an upper floor where waste was simply dropped into the street below. Pedestrians were warned by the shout, "Gardez l'eau," French for "watch out for the water," giving them a chance to step aside before being splashed. And sometimes, chamber pot contents weren't thrown away at all. During certain periods, including wartime, urine was collected by officials because it could be processed into saltpeter, an essential ingredient in gunpowder. In other words, your personal waste could literally contribute to military campaigns. Social customs around bathroom use were equally striking. Privacy, as we expect today, didn't really exist for most people. Families often used chamber pots in front of each other. At parties, men would casually step out into the garden to relieve themselves among the plants. Yet, despite all of these complications, Victorian women managed to keep their reputations for grace and refinement. They developed routines, strategies, and unwritten rules that allowed them to balance strict social expectations with very real physical needs. Their ability to adapt, turning everyday necessities into discrete, workable systems, shows just how creative and determined they were. Looking at these practices today may seem surprising or even amusing, but they reveal much more than odd habits. They give us insight into the values of the time, the structure of society, and the extraordinary measures people took to uphold appearances while dealing with the same basic human needs we all share. Throughout history, people have always found ways to adapt to difficult circumstances, no matter how overwhelming they seemed. Victorian women were pioneers in this kind of problem solving. They created routines and systems that let them function in a world where even the simplest human needs were made unnecessarily complicated by fashion and social expectations. What's truly remarkable is how these demanding rituals became completely normal. Women carried them out with such regularity that they became second natures. Many developed almost military-style discipline when it came to handling their clothing, their schedules, and their personal care. Every day had to be planned around their wardrobe. They thought carefully about how long they could go without proper facilities, controlled how much they drank, and even worked together with other women to share retiring rooms and attendance when necessary. The mental strength it took to maintain grace in these circumstances was extraordinary. Imagine attending a formal dinner party. You're expected to hold perfect posture in a tight corset, make clever conversation, and dance with ease, all while knowing that any urgent bathroom need would require a small operation of planning and assistance. That constant pressure demanded an incredible level of composure. Victorian women also built quiet support networks. Mothers passed down secret techniques to daughters. Servants became specialists in discreet assistance, understanding exactly how to help without drawing unwanted attention. Friends shared coded language and subtle signals at parties to communicate bathroom needs without ever breaking the rules of polite conversation. The economic weight of this clothing culture was enormous too. Wealthy families employed entire teams of workers, laundresses, ladies' maids, seamstresses, each with specific roles in maintaining these complex wardrobes. The labor required just to keep one lady's clothing functional was staggering. Interestingly, the burden of this fashion sometimes led to surprising outcomes. Since the outfits were so inconvenient, many wealthy women spent more time at home or in carefully controlled environments. That shift pushed some toward education, domestic arts, and intellectual interests. Historians suggest that the impracticality of Victorian clothing may have encouraged women to focus on less physical but more mentally engaging activities. The slow move away from these extremes didn't happen all at once. It took decades of change. Cycling became popular for women, encouraging more practical dress. Then World War I forced women to take on active roles. which demanded freedom of movement. Over time, giant crinolines gave way to bustles and eventually to skirt designs that were far more manageable. Looking back, it's tempting to see these clothing systems as quirky relics of the past, but they tell us something much deeper about resilience and human creativity. Victorian women didn't just survive the difficulties, they mastered them. They designed clever ways to handle daily life with dignity, health, and social grace, all while confined by some of the most impractical fashions ever invented. Their legacy goes beyond chamber pots and corsets. The solutions they developed influenced not only fashion and etiquette, but also public health improvements, plumbing systems, and the eventual push for more practical clothing. Their challenges shaped the modern conveniences we enjoy. So the next time you step into comfortable clothes, use a modern bathroom, or go through your daily routines with ease, remember the long journey it took to get here. Victorian women carried those burdens with determination, and in doing so, they paved the way for freedoms and comforts we now take for granted. Their story shows that real innovation often comes from discomfort and necessity. Out of inconvenience, they created systems so polished that they managed to keep their elegance intact. That is the hidden story of how Victorian women handled one of life's most basic needs while dressed like living works of art. It's proof of human resilience, ingenuity, and the unshakable desire to preserve dignity. So, what did you think of this look into Victorian bathroom life? Were you surprised by how inventive these routines were? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to let me know where you're watching from. I love seeing how people from around the world connect through these fascinating histories. And if you enjoyed this journey, make sure to subscribe. We've got plenty more incredible stories ahead. From ancient beauty tricks you won't believe to medieval eating habits that will change how you think about food. Thanks for joining me today, and I'll see you in the next video, where we'll explore another surprising historical mystery that might just rewrite what you thought you knew about the past.